Hi, everyone. This is Beth Rogan. I'm the Associate Director of Marketing and Outreach for William James College. I'm here to welcome you to our Clinical PsyD online information session. So thank you all for joining us today during your lunch hour. We have a great group on today and we're really excited. So we know it's going to be very interactive and everyone will learn from each other. But mostly you will be learning from our wonderful presenter today, Dr. Joseph Toomey, and he will introduce himself in a little bit. And as you can see here, he is the Associate Chair of the Clinical Psychology Department here at William James College, an associate professor in the Clinical Psychology Department, as well as the director of the Forensic Psychology Concentration. So he has a lot of information to share with you all. And Joseph Lush is the Associate Director of Admissions. He will be joining later on in the presentation to talk about things to think about when applying to graduate school and more specifically William James College. I will be acting as your host, and what that means is I will be presenting some overview information about William James College and managing the questions as they come in. We will be presenting them at a couple different slides during the program. So, we're really welcome questions and thank you for joining us again today. So Joe, next slide, and here we are. This is our question slide where you can see where you would type in your message here, and we'll be addressing it later. I did want everybody to know that in the handout section, I'm told not only do we have the Clinical PsyD PowerPoint that you can download, but you can also download the application guidelines and the financial aid guidelines. So they should be there for you to be able to download if you would like. Okay, so next slide, please. So this is a facade of William James College, our campus in Newton, Massachusetts. And if you are local, you'll know that Newton is about 15 minutes, and I say this as a disclaimer, in non-rush hour traffic to downtown Boston. Our campus is located right off of major highways, so that it's really easy for our students to come onto campus and to get here. Free parking, that's great, but what I really love to talk about is what's inside this wonderful state-of-the-art building of psychology and behavioral health. And we have an amazing culture here. We have amazing professors. As a matter of fact, within the Clinical PsyD department, we have over 50 professors that are practitioners, and our students are really just fabulous, amazing. They come from all different walks of life and scenarios and interests and diversity, and we have just an amazing culture within William James College. So I'd love to talk about that because I think that's what's really important. And with that, we'll move on to our next slide. And this is an overview of the programming that we have, the departments and the programming that we do have and offer at William James College. So as you can see, we surely are a college of psychology and behavioral health. And the first box is the Clinical PsyD department. You'll hear all about that today, so I won't talk about that. I'll move on to the counseling department, where we offer a master's in clinical mental health counseling, which is we have our online program, which is our flagship program. It's been around for 12, 14 years, and our online program, which is a newer offering as well, and that leads to licensure, both of those programs, as well as a master's in psychology program, which is a non-licensed program. Organizational and leadership psychology, in that department, we offer both a PsyD doctoral program and master's programs in organizational psychology, and as you can see, organizational leadership. And our students and faculty in this department they work within organizations to provide really the theory of psychology in assessment and counseling around really providing efficient and humane workplaces and providing consultation around leadership and so on. So it's a really very, very interesting area of psychology that is not a clinical focus. As well as the Organizational Leadership Psychology Department, we have school psychology, and you can see that we offer a MA CAGS. That's a 3-year program to be a school psychologist. We also have Masters in Applied Behavior Analysis, which is on campus and online. It's a 30-credit, 1-year full-time program or part-time, and a certification in ABA as well. We, as you can see, have an undergraduate program. It's a completion program, BS in psychology and human services for individuals that have the equivalent of an associate's degree. It's really a workforce development program for people that are working and want to move on in their career. As well as these wonderful offerings we have in academics, we also have many centers of excellence, and those include areas where we're providing direct service, some research in some cases, and as well as academics and sites for our students, for internship sites, as well as many other kinds of things like offering advocacy around mental health and psychology as well. So with that, we'll move on now to our next slide. And I just really want to take a minute to talk about our core values, because I think it really sets us apart from many other colleges and programs. Experiential education is one of them. It's a hallmark for our training here at William James College. Our students essentially start in the first week in their program, in their field placement, in their practicum, as well as in their coursework. And they have a seminar class that bridges the two, so you're applying what you're learning every day in the classroom in the field. And that's really a model that's very, very powerful. And we're really proud of that here at William James College. We also have in our core values set social responsibility. It's really key to our mission to really look to how we can meet a need and make a difference, break down barriers around mental health and psychology, to also look to diversify the workforce and serve underserved and marginalized populations. So there are many programs that we offer to do that, as well as that's part of our core curriculum. Personal growth is something that our students exponentially, of course, grow as you would want to in a program, but I think it happens here in a very special way. We have over 50 practitioner faculty, which I mentioned before. Our advising for our faculty to student advising is 1 to 12. You're not a number, you're very well known, and there's tremendous mentorship. So you'll hear more about that, as well as our commitment to diversity. We talked about social justice, inclusion, and intercultural understanding. So with that, we're going to move on to an audience poll, which I'm really excited because we have a really great number on today. If you could let us know, because we really want to target this talk to our audience, if you plan to start graduate school in the fall of 2021 or the fall of 2022, or you're undecided. If you could let us know that, that would be really helpful. And we will then share that with you in a few minutes. So just looking to see, we already have a question. And I think we have a question from one of our audience members who is having trouble hearing. So Joe, I don't know if you can take a look at that and see if you could reach out to Brent, please, around he may need to restart or use his phone as opposed to his computer. I don't think anyone else is having it.
He might want to also just check the volume settings on the on his computer. They maybe
he fixed it. It's all fixed for Brent. Thank you. Great.
Great.
Good. Okay. So our polls now, we're ready to share. 82% of you are looking for the fall of 2021. That's excellent to know. and 3% fall of 2022, and the rest of you are undecided. Great, thank you so much. That's really helpful for us today. Okay, so now without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Dr. Joseph Toomey.
Thank you very much, Beth. Hi, everyone. So I'm Joseph Toomey. I'm the Associate Chair of the Clinical Psychology Department. And as Beth mentioned, I'm also an Associate Professor in the department, and I direct the Forensic Psychology concentration. I've been at William James for about 6 years. Prior to coming to William James, I actually worked full-time as a forensic and correctional psychologist, either working in correctional institutions, jails, and prisons, doing things like psychotherapy and crisis interventions and assessments with inmates, and also worked for the courts doing forensic evaluations. I still do work quite a bit as a forensic psychologist, doing some consultation and forensic evaluations. And you'll see in a minute that that's not uncommon for a lot of our faculty. Not that they do forensic work, but they do actual clinical work outside of the program. So if we jump to the next slide, I can talk to you a little bit about our faculty in the clinical psychology department. So most of you probably know at this point in researching different doctoral programs that we are a larger doctoral program. So we admit approximately 100 students each year to our doctoral program. And because we do, we assure that we have a large enough faculty that the students who come don't feel like they're in a very large program. They have the feel of a much smaller group that they're working with. They have the feel that the faculty members that they're working with know their name and know them well, either through their classwork or through mentorship with faculty members. So we have more than 50 faculty. We have approximately 50 full-time faculty, and then several additional faculty who are affiliated in a variety of ways, either as teaching faculty or adjunct faculty who work with our students in various capacities. We consider our faculty to really be scholar practitioners. And by that, what I mean is that the vast majority of our faculty are doing some kind of clinical work in the field. Our faculty typically work 4 days a week at the college, and then 1 day a week they spend doing other activities, and most of them do spend that time in clinical work. So you're really learning from people who are engrossed in psychological practice in the field. So they're teaching based on their experience and not experience that they gained several years ago, but active cases that they're working with. And by scholars, these are faculty who very much value the evidence base that's associated with psychology. And so they're constantly keeping informed of the newest interventions, newest techniques, assessments that our field has to offer, and then integrating that literature into their coursework and into their mentoring. Our faculty advise research projects. Each student in our program completes a final research project before they graduate, but they're not engrossed in research in quite the same way that you might find faculty in PhD programs, where research is what or grant-funded research in particular is what often funds the positions within those programs. Because our faculty are scholar practitioners, their focus is really much more on teaching from the perspective of the work that they do from the intervention and assessment side of things. So the interests that they have are wide and varied in terms of the research that they mentor. So typically when a student comes into our program, if they have a particular area of interest, there's at least 1 to 2 faculty members on our in our department who have expertise in that area and can mentor students as far as their research interests are concerned. Next slide, please. So this is something that's very important that I'm sure people are wondering about, and hopefully we won't have to worry too much about in the fall of 2021. But certainly this has been a very disruptive year for us as far as the COVID-19 pandemic is concerned. But rest assured that we have found a lot of really creative ways to make sure that our students are still receiving the highest level education that we can possibly provide to them. So our classes began remotely in the spring of 2020, continued through the summer, have continued through the fall online, to assure that we're following the most current safety protocols being handed down by state and federal agencies. So we've continued to be online, but our building has remained open and accessible for students to access if they wanted to use the library or they wanted to use workspaces. The college spared no expense in assuring that all safety protocols were enacted, whether they be things to keep students and staff separated from each other at appropriate social distances, or state-of-the-art sanitizing equipment being installed throughout the building. So again, even when this passes, I think you'll find that our building will be one of the safest and most sanitary buildings that you've encountered really anywhere. In addition to the safety protocols just focused on people's physical health, we've also spent a great deal of time training our faculty on the most current pedagogical techniques for teaching online. We've been holding weekly training sessions with our faculty to assure that they're utilizing the most up-to-date technology in the courses that they're teaching. And we've also been offering trainings to our students in telehealth to assure that our students who are working in the field and they're working remotely in the field are most up to date as far as best practices are concerned with telehealth, which is obviously quite different than working with someone face to face. Finally, what we've utilized in a lot of our classes in those instances where people are unable to work directly with clients in the field is that we incorporate what we call simulated patients into a number of our courses. And so this is a company that provides actors who are very well versed in portraying different forms of mental illness. And our students are able to really practice their craft in a safe space where they can make choices and decisions under supervision with simulated patients in order to work out those kinks and work out any errors so that they can be stronger in their provision of services in the field. So those are some of the things that we've been doing, that we continue to do at the college. It is our hope that with the news coming out about vaccines, that we'll return to some semblance of normal by the fall 2021. But the information about how we're doing and what we're doing is accessible at this website here that you see on the slide. So I encourage you to check periodically for those updates to see what it is that we're doing from time to time. Okay, so the next slide. So let me talk a little bit more about our program. So our program is an APA-accredited PsyD program. So first and foremost, if you're out there looking for doctoral programs, you really should be looking to assure that the program is APA-accredited. APA accreditation is a stamp that assures that the highest organization within our field has certified that that program is providing you with the most up-to-date and empirically supported education. It's also a safety for you if you choose to go on to be licensed in any given state. Or you choose to acquire an internship as part of your training, that you're coming from a legitimate program, and oftentimes many states will not certify you for licensure if you don't come from that type of program. So whether you choose our program or any other program, please make sure you're looking to make sure that that program is APA accredited. So the focus of our program is really on the 9 competencies that APA has determined to be the foundations of clinical psychology. So these are some of them. The ones that you would most commonly associate with psychology are things like psychotherapy, assessment, supervision. Something that people don't often necessarily think of immediately when they think of psychology is something like leadership, but we at William James really do focus on incorporating leadership styles and skills within our curriculum, because we do believe that psychologists possess the highest level of training and education in the field that would permit them to be really true and great leaders. So psychotherapy assessment supervision, typically the things that people most commonly think of, but the program also focuses on areas like research and statistics, which are really essential to understanding empirically supported treatments and the research that supports the different interventions that we engage in and assessment techniques that we use. We also focus on ethical and legal guidelines that all psychologists must be aware of in order to practice well. We focus on things like consultation and professionalism and interpersonal communication. These are all things that are important aspects of working as a psychologist, and we assess different elements of those competencies throughout your training in the program. As I mentioned before, we have a very large and diverse faculty, which provides tremendous opportunity to train in different niche areas within clinical psychology. We have a very close-knit culture that's very supportive in our learning environment. People tend to say that this is a program where they feel very much held, that it's not a program where they feel like they're lost or they fall through the cracks or they're not getting the attention that they think that they need in order to be successful. In fact, quite the opposite. Some of the things that I think are quite strong about our program are our advising relationship with our students. Each student who enters the program is assigned a faculty advisor who guides them and mentors them throughout their time in the program. Our students also participate in seminar-like courses. We call these our clinical practice courses in years 1 and 2 in particular, where you're in a much smaller group of peers, between 6 and 8 students per classroom seminar, where you're working very closely with a psychologist, one of our faculty members, on the work that you're doing in the field, discussing that with your peers, seeking support, seeking consultation. And then finally, at the end of every year, students work collaboratively with their advisor and their field supervisors to have what we call A&P conferences, or assessment and planning conferences, where they discuss the current year's progress towards their training goals and also plan for their training goals in the coming year. All in all, our program is 134 credits, which includes a doctoral project. Most PhD programs refer to this as a dissertation. We refer to this as a doctoral project because it's something more like in between a master's thesis and a dissertation in terms of its rigor, but it is rigorous enough that we believe it meets the elements of the research competencies that APA requires from any given doctoral program. So on our next slide, another important component of that 134 credits is our field education experiences. So at William James, we begin our students in the field in year 1. This is true of some other doctoral programs, but not all. In many doctoral programs, students don't begin their field experience until their 2nd year. But we begin our students in the field in their first year. And we carefully craft those first year experiences to make sure that they are ones that the student can feel competent in the work that they're doing. They're not being asked to do more than you would expect from a first year student. So these are typically things that help you to get to know the different systems that you might be working in, engaging in different types of case management types of opportunities, so that you can really learn about the environment and the clientele that you're working with before you begin to provide intervention and so forth, which would happen in years 2, 3, and 4, once you've taken more of the intervention courses and you've gotten more comfortable with working in the field. So we have over 200 sites in the New England area that we partner with and that students can choose from for their training experiences. Here are just a few of the sites that we work with that you may have heard of from the Boston area. What's really great about being located in the Boston area is that there are so many opportunities in Boston proper, but also in surrounding areas out towards Worcester, which is in central Massachusetts, or even down towards Providence, Rhode Island. We have a lot of our students training in a variety of these settings that provide for really diverse, rich experiences. So on our next slide, this provides you with a little bit more detail about what your field education experience looks like over the course of your training. So our program is a 5-year program. And the first 4 years at minimum of the program are in residence, which means that you're taking classes at the college. And then your 5th year for most of our students is a full-time APA internship, which could be anywhere in the country. So the way that works for psychology training programs, this is true of any psychology training program, is that students apply to a national matching system where they choose from any number of sites across the country of places where they'd like to work. And then they're matched to the site that is the best fit based on the student's choice and the site's choice. A system will match them based on those choices. So what's interesting and what's really unique and beneficial about William James is that we actually have a second opportunity that students can take advantage of to complete their final internship. So most students in most programs across the country will do that 4 years in residence and then a 5th year internship. At William James, you have an opportunity to split that 5th year over the course of year 4 and 5 and do a half-time APA-accredited internship through our consortium. So our consortium provides training opportunities only to William James students. So between 25 and 30 students a year, and that's roughly 25 to 30% of our students in a given year will choose to do our APA consortium. Oftentimes they do this because they need to stay local for one reason or another. So our consortium sites are all located much closer to the Boston area, or they just believe that one of these sites is the best possible fit for them. And these sites are very, very high quality sites across a wide range of different settings. So what's true for every student is that in years 1, 2, and 3, they do practicum 1, practicum 2, and then an advanced practicum. And then they have that choice, which is, again, a unique choice to William James. It gives you really 2 different opportunities to complete your internship. You could either do in year 4 and 5 our consortium, which is split half-time between years 4 and 5, or you can do a second advanced practicum in year 4 and then do your internship full-time in year 5, and that could be, again, anywhere across the country. So that's something that I think you should really keep in mind when you're looking at other programs. Do they give you this second opportunity? Do they really give you these 2 bites at the apple? Or do you really have just that one chance in year 5 to complete your internship? I think it's a really compelling opportunity here at the college. So on the next slide, we have an opportunity now to field any questions if they have come up so far.
We do have a couple questions. Thank you, Dr. Toomey. Ben has a question that relates to the student feedback, learning virtually, and the PsyD workload, excuse me. And do they share that it is manageable with an online format?
So I'm hearing sort of 2 questions. So one is what the students' feedback has been about the online learning process. And we have actually conducted several surveys between the spring semester, the summer, and during the fall, checking in with students about how things are going online. And the vast majority of students have found that the transition has been quite smooth. That they've enjoyed the online learning platform. The most complaints that we get are difficulties with connections. So students might have difficulty with their Wi-Fi, or a faculty member may have difficulty with their Wi-Fi that interrupts a class, but that the class itself has transitioned very well. They feel like they're learning just as well in the online environment as they were in the in-person environment. As far as the workload is concerned, any doctoral program is going to be quite a heavy workload. It is a lot of courses, it's a lot of reading, it's a lot of understanding of concepts, but our students have not given us feedback that their workload has been excessive since the change. A lot of students in any doctoral program do struggle to get used to the workload, but typically we find that our students get into the swing of things by the end of their first semester of their first year.
Great, thank you. And Daniel was asking if it's possible to complete the program in under 5 years, or is 5 years the minimum?
The only way that you could possibly complete it in less is if you were to come in with what we call advanced standing. And so advanced standing is a bit of a complicated thing. I don't know that we have the time to really fully explain it here, but you can communicate with the admissions department a little bit more about what advanced standing is. But in a nutshell, if you have a qualifying master's degree, so it's a master's degree in certain areas that's been earned within the last 5 years, and the courses that you took match on to the competencies that APA requires for doctoral programs, then we could potentially transfer in a sufficient number of credits that you would enter essentially at the second year of training. So it cuts off about a year of training. It's a bit of a difficult hurdle to make because most master's programs don't teach to the APA competencies because they don't have to. Doctoral programs have to teach to the APA competencies. So you go through a process, you submit materials, we review those materials. If we find that they do meet that standard for advanced standing, then you can enter in essentially effectively at the year 2 level. That's really the only way to complete the program in less than 5 years.
Okay, we have a couple more questions, so I'll just move forward with those. Since the practicum placements are located throughout New England area, Marcia was wondering how it works with commuting to the placement and to classes if they are far apart.
So this is a situation, because of where our program is located and how it's located and the way that public transportation works in the sort of greater Boston area, that we find that it is really essential for students to have access to a vehicle. If you were attending a program, in Manhattan and all of your placements were in Manhattan, then you could very easily not have a vehicle. But because of where our program is located, you really do need to have a vehicle because it's possible that your placement could be, 45 minutes away from the college and not accessible by public transportation. Our building itself is not really easily accessible by public transportation. So having a vehicle is really essential.
Okay. All right, so Brent was asking for Dr. Toomey to talk about some of the practicum sites that are connected with the forensic concentration.
Sure. So the forensic concentration does require that the students have at least one placement in a forensically relevant setting. And so we have a couple of different settings that are in psychiatric hospitals that accept forensic referrals. So there are civil psychiatric facilities operated by the Department of Mental Health or the Department of Public Health that house patients who are either going through forensic evaluations or have been committed through the courts. So we have a number of those settings: the Worcester Recovery Center, Lemuel Shattuck Hospital, Taunton State Hospital, just to name a few. We also have a secure maximum security forensic hospital with Bridgewater State Hospital, where students train. The Massachusetts Treatment Center, which houses civilly committed sexual offenders. We have a couple of court clinics, as well as a county jail, and adolescent forensic unit at UMass in Worcester. So we have a wide variety of different sites that students can train in if they're interested in forensics.
Okay, so there are two questions here, Dr. Toomey, about concentrations. For the concentrations, is it possible to have two? And Angela also says, what if you were interested in multiple concentrations?
Well, so why don't we save that, because the next two slides are actually about concentrations.
Right, that's a good point.
So I can cover a lot of that in the next two slides, and we're going to have additional time for questions after that. So why don't we jump into talk about the concentrations?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
And then we'll field some more questions.
Great, thank you.
So So these are our departmental concentrations. So what the concentrations are at William James is a series of organized opportunities for students to gain some sort of niche area experience in different critical domains. So the largest of our concentrations is the Children and Families of Adversity and Resilience concentration, or CFAR. Essentially, this is for folks who are interested in working with kids and with families who come from really disadvantaged backgrounds. And so this is really our largest concentration because a lot of folks want to work with children and families. Our neuropsychology concentration is a little bit of a smaller concentration, but it's for those folks who want to potentially go on to be a neuropsychologist or work doing neuropsychological evaluations in different types of outpatient or hospital settings. The forensic concentration, which I direct, is the second largest concentration in the department. This concentration is really focused on developing professionals, giving them the foundational skills that they need to be experts for the courts. So a forensic psychologist is someone who provides expert testimony or expert consultation to different areas of the court system. So for example, I conduct court-ordered evaluations of things like competency or insanity or dangerousness for the courts, and then provide expert testimony to the court about that particular issue. So that's what the program is really designed to do, is to train individuals in the areas that are needed to have good foundational skills for that type of career. Many of our students do go on to correctional type of work, but the program itself is not specifically designed for correctional work, but it does give you the foundational skills you need for that. Our geropsychology concentration focuses on developing the skills needed to work with elderly citizens, which we're finding to be a really growing area of need and a really substantially underserved population. And then our health psychology concentration works with students who are interested in working in interdisciplinary settings with medical professionals, answering questions around mental health needs as they relate to those types of medical settings. So oftentimes people who are undergoing medical procedures experience depression or anxiety or have side effects that resemble a lot of mental health related types of issues. So psychologists are really essential in those settings. So these concentrations are, students take advantage of them by using their elective credits to take courses within these areas. So there was a question about, can you take more than one concentration? It depends on how many elective credits you have available. So if you have sufficient elective credits, you could take up to 2 concentrations. Oftentimes what people will do if they're interested in 2 different areas is they'll just take some elective credits from those areas and not necessarily do a full concentration in those areas because they just simply don't have enough elective credits to do more than one. About half of our students don't choose any concentration. They just choose to remain generalist and might take 1 or 2 courses from some of these concentrations. So you really have that opportunity to work closely with your advisor to figure out the best possible combination of things for you, and then move forward with their guidance and the guidance of the director for each of those concentrations. On the next slide, we have a list of some additional concentrations that people have the ability to choose from, but these are college-wide concentrations. So students from other departments can take advantage of these concentrations. The ones before on the previous slide, those are just clinical psychology concentrations. So only students in the clinical psychology department are in those concentrations. With these concentrations, there are students from any number of departments. So Beth talked about all of our different departments earlier. So the Latino mental health concentration, African and Caribbean mental health, global mental health, Asian mental health, and then our military and veteran psychology program. These are all concentrations that students from any department can participate in. and have their own various opportunities, like there are immersion programs, for example, in our global mental health and Latino mental health programs, where students travel to Haiti and Guyana and Ecuador to do work with populations there. So these are additional opportunities that people can take advantage of. So the last thing I'll say is on our next slide, which is just a bit of an indication of career outlooks. So here are some numbers that give you a good sense for how satisfied our students are with the education that they received and the choice of profession that they made when they chose to become a psychologist. The percentage of our graduates who become licensed. So not every person who graduates from a doctoral program in psychology becomes licensed. Some go on to work in research settings or in academic settings where they don't need a license, but the vast majority of our graduates do go on to become licensed. 75% are working in settings that are highly consistent with our mission of working with the underserved. And almost 90%, 87% of our students obtain a job in the field within 6 months of graduation. That's something that's really impressive, because with a lot of other fields, a lot of other graduate fields like law, for example, sometimes people can spend a considerably long time looking for a job in the field before they find something, and that's something that's not true of our graduates. Okay, so now we have time for some additional questions, if there are more, which I suspect that there are.
Okay, great, thank you. So there was a question about PsyD versus PhD, if you could explain that. And also, this is kind of related, do we have research labs?
So the major differences, so first of all, there are more similarities than differences between PsyD and PhD programs. So PsyD and PhD programs both need, if they want to be accredited by the APA, both need to train students to the 9 competencies that APA is looking for, as well as each individual elements under each of those competencies, which there are dozens. And they have to assess those and document that the students have met those competencies. So that's regardless of whether you're in a PsyD program or a PhD program, that's always going to be the same if it's an APA accredited program. The main difference between a PsyD and a PhD program is the focus on research and funding. So in PhD programs, there is a focus on research that's typically above and beyond the what APA sort of requires as far as the assessment of competencies is concerned. Students spend a lot more of their time working on research, writing manuscripts, working with their mentors on submitting grants, for example. And the major impetus behind that is that funding for those PhD programs is typically contingent on grant monies that come into the institution. So students who go to PhD programs are much smaller cohorts because grant monies are finite and they're competitive. So they're much smaller cohorts, anywhere between 6 and 12 students are typically accepted into PhD programs. Whereas with PsyD programs, the focus goes above and beyond, typically in the areas of intervention and assessment, and there's less of a focus, or there's the requisite focus on research, but less of a focus than you would see in PhD institutions, because the funding is not driven by grants that are being brought in. That's why these programs can be larger. They're tuition funded. So you pay more out of pocket for a PsyD program. You'll take out loans, for example, to pay for a PsyD program, but there's a much greater opportunity for admission to PsyD programs because they accept much larger groups. So what happens with PhD programs is they may have 25 students who are really highly qualified to be in their program, but they only have 6 spots. So now you have 19 students who are highly qualified to be psychologists who don't have an opportunity within that program because there's just not sufficient funding to bring that person in. So those students would then pay pay for their own tuition, typically through PsyD programs. So those are really the sort of major differences between the two.
Great, thank you so much. Let's see. I think we can take this one more question, which is kind of like two questions combined. So Kester says, is there a specific style of writing that you would recommend candidates develop prior to enrolling? Her master's was in a different discipline. And then Daniel was saying, how important is it to have a background in psychology? How do students who are pivoting from a different field fare compared to those who studied psychology in undergrad? So I don't know if those are kind of similar questions in a sense, in terms of not having studied psychology initially.
So in order to be accepted to the program, you have to have at least some coursework in psychology. And so there's some prerequisite courses that you can access by contacting the admissions department. So you can't really come into a doctoral program with no background at all whatsoever in psychology. You at least would have to have some of these courses at the undergraduate level. But if you haven't worked in the field of psychology, that's not necessarily something that would hinder you from being admitted to a program. What programs are really looking for is the temperament, the interpersonal style, plus the academic capability to be in the program. So just because you haven't worked in that area isn't necessarily something that would prevent you from being accepted or being successful in a program. As far as writing is concerned, writing is essential in doctoral programs. You write a substantial amount. You read a lot. You're asked to synthesize materials, to summarize materials, to incorporate new information into your ideas and think critically about things, and then to communicate that in a written form. And so if writing is an area where you struggle, then really any doctoral program in psychology will be a great challenge. You have to like writing, you have to enjoy it, or else being in a doctoral program is something that will be beyond challenging for you. As far as the writing style is concerned, the issue that I think gives people the most trouble is separating out sort of an editorial approach to writing versus a sort of analytical style of writing. So the analytical style of writing is really the one that should be developed the most for successful work in training in psychology. The editorial perspective sort of has its place in some areas, but primarily what we're looking for is for folks who can read information with an open and objective perspective, and then can incorporate that information and critique it from an analytical perspective, but not necessarily from a sort of personal value sort of based perspective in how they're writing things. Again, there is space for that in some classes and in some opportunities. As you think of social justice issues, for example, there's plenty of room for value and so forth. But when it comes to writing about interventions and assessment style and research, really what you need to develop is that analytical writing style.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, so I think we'll move on. We have more questions, but we'll move on so that we have some time for Joe to talk about the application process, and there are questions related to that as well.
Thank you, Beth. Welcome, everyone. My name is Joseph Lush, Associate Director of Admissions here at William James College. Thank you also to Dr. Toomey for a great presentation. And so for those of you who are attending today who are considering an application to William James College, I just want to offer a brief overview of the application process that you would follow for becoming a student here. And then I'll also outline for you the basic contents of your application portfolio. And so before we talk about the basics of preparing an application portfolio, I just want to offer a quick overview of the key measurements of readiness that we consider when we're evaluating the credentials of a candidate. So on the slide that you see in front of you now, you'll see a summary of the key measurements of readiness for which we'll consider both the credentials that are a part of your application portfolio, and then later we'll incorporate into our overall review of readiness the outcome of your interview. And so the common measurements of academic readiness, as you might imagine, will be the candidate's undergraduate grade point average, and then we'll also be looking at the overall strength of your application essay as it relates to the usage of grammar and sentence construction. And I think Dr. Toomey made abundantly clear the importance of good, solid, writing ability. So your application essay plays a major role in giving us, some insight as to how well you will adapt to the academic writing, demands of the program. And also we'll be looking carefully at the extent to which the applicant's references, for which you'll need 3 of them, will strongly endorse a candidate's overall academic readiness. So, for those of you who are soon to be graduates of a bachelor's degree program, perhaps you'll be graduating this coming spring, or perhaps you are a recent graduate of a bachelor's program. The obvious and natural source of a reference is going to be a current or former academic professor, or possibly an academic advisor or department chair. Also, if you had the benefit of completing a field experience as part of your bachelor's degree, the supervisors of your field experience would also make for a really good reference source. And then for the interview, this activity obviously plays a major role in determining the outcome of your candidacy. And it basically provides candidates with an opportunity to convey to the interviewer that they possess a high level of commitment to completing the degree program, and that they have a basic understanding of the professional role that they are aspiring to become, and that they also possess the appropriate level of emotional maturity and interpersonal skills that are required for success in this type of work. Okay, let's move on to the next slide here. And here is a basic checklist of items that will comprise your application portfolio. So as I mentioned, you will need to furnish 3 references. We'll be asking you to compose an application essay. And that essay will probably run roughly about 4 or 5 or 6 pages in length, and we'll give you some writing prompts to help you to organize your thoughts. We'll ask you to furnish us with a current copy of your resume, and of course, official academic transcripts from all academic work that you've completed up to the point that you're applying to the program. And if you haven't already received this notification through our emails, just want to remind you that for applicants for our fall 2021 incoming class, we are waiving the GRE score requirement that we normally ask for, and so no GRE scores are required to be a part of your application portfolio. And as I mentioned earlier, we do require an interview. And so once we've had a chance to review all of your application portfolio credentials, we'll contact you through your application account. And if we invite you for an interview, we'll give you the details as to the date and time for that. And just a few quick words about financial aid opportunities here. We do have quite a bit of scholarship money to offer to selected candidates to our program here. And we have a number of merit scholarships that we make available to our candidates. And we have roughly about 20 scholarships to offer as a merit scholarship program. And these have a value of roughly about 10% of the total cost of the program. And then we do have some other scholarship opportunities that do require a separate application. So what I'd like you to do is take a look at our website and look at the scholarship opportunities, specifically the Serving the Mental Health Needs of the Underserved Scholarship, the Latino Mental Health Scholarship. We do have some scholarship opportunities for students who are interested in the study of geropsychology. So those scholarship opportunities do have a separate application essay that would be over and above the application essay that you would furnish as part of your application for admission. So have a look at our website and see if those scholarship opportunities fit the professional interest and the career goals that you've developed for yourself. And then if you would like to submit an essay for that, we'll be happy to consider that. And then finally, there's financing that we offer through the Federal Student Loan Program. And the reality is that the vast majority of our students do finance most or all of the cost of attendance for this type of program. And the good news is that our graduates actually do quite well with managing the repayment of their student loans. We do keep track of this information, and so we do have a really good track record with students being able to successfully manage the repayment of their loans. And then finally, I'll just say a few words about student employment opportunities. The PsyD program employs roughly about 20 teaching assistants in the program. So these are employment opportunities where you can work for one semester. You're going to be working with a faculty member that is teaching a course or two in the program, and you'll be helping that faculty member administer that course during the semester. So there's a small stipend that we offer as our compensation for that work. The time commitment is fairly modest. It's only about 6 or 7 or 8 hours per week. And then we have some more traditional student employment opportunities. These are hourly positions. Again, roughly about 6 or 7 or 8 hours per week. These positions pay an hourly wage, and they're funded through the Federal Work Study Program. So you do need to be eligible to file the free application for federal student aid in order to qualify for those part-time employment opportunities. Okay, in the interest of time, we have just a few minutes left until we come to 1 o'clock. So I want to hand it back to Beth for any last-minute questions.
Okay, thank you. And we'll get these questions answered by email, folks, if we didn't get a chance to answer yours. So approximately how many, Joe, applicants does WJC have for their PsyD program each year?
Yes, so we typically see about 330 to 350 applications for admission to this program. And of that group, we typically invite to interview roughly about 80 to 85% of that applicant pool. And then of the pool of applicants that's invited to interview, again, we typically offer admission to about 80 to 85% of that pool of applicants that has completed the interview process. And so from that applicant pool of 330 to 350 applicants, we typically end with a enrolling class of right around 100 students.
Okay, and then how many, what percentage of students are coming right out of their bachelor's degree program? What percentage of graduate students are straight from a bachelor's degree?
Roughly about 85% of candidates who apply to the program and are offered admission and enroll into the program have just a bachelor's degree. If they have any post-bachelor's work experience, it's usually no more than about maybe a year or so. So roughly about 85% of that applicant pool. The other 15% are folks that have some graduate school experience. They either have a master's degree or they have some graduate coursework.
Okay, and this question is for Dr. Toomey. Do you find that students who choose not to do a concentration or become a generalist are as prepared and successful with their doctoral projects?
Yes, we don't really see any noticeable differences between concentration students and non-concentration students in terms of their doc projects.
Okay. And should the individual, should you declare your concentration on your application? Should we indicate the
So the only
concentration? Yeah.
Right. So you can check an area of interest on the application. That's definitely helpful to us if there's like a concentration that you're interested in. There's space for you to do that on the application itself. But you don't declare your concentration until you come to the college. Most students don't declare their concentration until their second year, because in their first year, they're doing all of their foundational coursework. The only concentration where that's different is the Children and Families of Adversity and Resilience, or CFAR concentration. They typically come in the concentration in their first year, or the Military and Vets program.
So for the CFAR concentration, Dr. Toomey, is that the best concentration for individuals who want to work with adolescents and young adults dealing with discrimination, or is it mostly focused on young children?
Well, both. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's focused on children and adolescents who are disadvantaged and often face the hardships of discrimination and other things.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay, so we still have more questions. I don't know if we want to just stay on a little bit and answer them or handle them later. It is now what time? 1:02. Joe, what would you like to do?
If there are any admissions questions, I can field them now, or
Okay.
we can
Dr. Toomey, do you need to jump off?
I can give a couple more minutes.
Okay, okay. All right, so one question is, what are the qualities that you observe among successful students in the program?
Oh, that's a great question.
Yeah.
Obviously, perseverance, dedication. It is something that requires a great deal of you, mentally and physically to make your way through a 5-year doctoral program. Great critical thinking skills, great writing skills are things that definitely stand out. Great interpersonal skills, just people who are easy to work with, who are flexible and can adjust to changing situations. This is a changing field. We learn new things. The APA gives us new guidance, on a yearly basis. So being flexible, I think, is also very important.
Okay, great, thank you. The question was around what do you think is the benefit of choosing the option of splitting the internship between years 4 and 5? So the consortium?
I'd say the main benefit, really, there are two. One is that there's a consortium site that just you think is a perfect fit for you. It is the area that you want to work in. You feel it's a good opportunity, maybe even to get a job in that setting when you're done with your internship. And then also just really needing to stay close to the area. Those are the two sort of main advantages. All the consortium placements are APA accredited, just like the national match sites. So there's not an advantage one way or the other there. But it can be difficult for people if they apply to the national match and they apply exclusively locally in the national match, because now they're competing with people from all over the country for those local spots. Whereas with the consortium, you're only competing with your peers at William James, which makes it a much higher likelihood of acquiring that spot than if you were competing against, perhaps more than 100 people from all over the country.
Okay, and then there was a question about that master's en route, and is that licensable? Can you do anything with that once you get that license? I mean,
No,
the
the
master's.
en route master's is not a license eligible master's degree. For things like counseling, they require very different things in their program, very different competencies. They have different course requirements in counseling programs than in psychology doctoral programs. So there's really not a way for us to kind of work our courses so they'd make you license eligible at the master's level as like a social worker or a mental health counselor. So you can earn an en route master's, which can often be beneficial to you in getting compensated and working in different settings, but you wouldn't be able to get licensed with that master's degree.
Okay, great. Thank you. Just a couple more. I think there was a question. This person, Brett, says he lives in Providence area, would he need to move to Massachusetts to get the PsyD or the master's in counseling if he decided that route?
No, you wouldn't have to move to Massachusetts. What you would need to be mindful of is the differences in licensing requirements between Massachusetts and Rhode Island, and make sure that you're checking the Board of Registration websites in Rhode Island if you want to be licensed there, and making sure that everything that we do at the college maps onto their licensing. And so we actually have a site on our website where you can access that information. Joe, is the NC SARA stuff accessible through the admissions website? Do you know?
Yeah, actually, there is a page on our website that actually offers a chart of all of the different states, and the chart will tell you at this point in time whether our PsyD program aligns with the licensing requirements of that state. And so, so that information is available right on our website right now.
Yeah. So
Well,
there you go.
I think we probably should jump off. We could, there's lots more questions, so we could go on for another half hour, folks. And I'm really sorry that we can't address all of them today. We do have lots of questions about like the timeline for admission interviews after the application is received. I don't know if you want to answer that question, Joe. Once the
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, in the application guidelines handout that is a part of this presentation, if you download that, you'll see all of the interview dates. And just to say quickly, if you're applying for our December 9th due date, which is coming up next week, you can expect to be called for an interview in late January. And if you apply for our January application due date, the interviews are going to be scheduled between mid-February and into the early part of March. And these interviews, of course, will be online due to the current COVID situation. So all of these interviews will be hosted virtually.
And I would recommend, Joe, can you just please give a little plug about the open house that's coming up? Because I think that's also, there's also going to be a Q&A session and videos that you can watch ahead of time that could be really helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, we do have an open house coming up on Wednesday, December 16th. It's going to be an evening event. And so we'll be hosting a series of live Zoom events over a period of about 90 minutes. And to prepare for that open house, we do have a number of videos that we'll ask attendees to view in advance. Each video is only about 2 or 3 or 4 minutes in length. So we'd love to have you come to that live open house. It'll be hosted via Zoom, so you'll be able to interact directly one-on-one with faculty, and we'll have some students on hand. We'll have some folks from the admissions and financial aid teams available to answer your questions.
Great, thank you. And would you just move to the next slide, because it has our contact information, I believe.
Yep. So yeah, if folks have any questions regarding the application process, happy to have a conversation with anyone who would like to strategize about how to put together the best possible application portfolio. Happy to have a conversation with those of you who have any questions about that process.
That would be great. And there's a few people that have questions sort of about, their application and their sort of competitiveness in being an applicant. So I think that'd be great for them to counsel with you
Yeah,
with you,
absolutely.
Joe.
If
Great.
anyone put any of those questions into the chat box, I will be addressing those one-on-one. So I'll reach out to you. We'll set up a date and time for us to have a chat.
Okay, well, thank you, everyone. This has been great. We could have done this for 2 hours today, but sorry, Joe and I are actually 15 minutes late for a meeting, but that's okay. This was well worth it. So thank you so much. Please just check out our social media channels. Find a lot of kind of information, and you'll just get a better sense, I think, of our community and all the wonderful things that are happening within our community and our constituency. So please check that out. Thank you again for attending, and we really appreciate having you join us today. So thank you so much. Dr. Toomey, did you have anything to say before you jump off?
Well, just thank you very much, and I hope to see your applications.
Okay, great. Thank you. Joe, do you have anything? I don't want to be the last person.
Yeah, no,
saying
I
goodbye
think we've covered everything. You know, again, for those of you who raised questions about the admissions process, if we didn't address them today, I will be reaching out to you shortly.
Great. Thank you so much, everyone. Have
Thanks
a nice
again.
rest of the day. Thanks, Dr. Toomey.
No problem. Bye now.
Bye.
Bye now.